I think what I'd like to do is ask Ms. Cole to present during new business tonight. I think her presentation is significant and should be moved to that slot. So without objection, could we order that?
No.
Okay. Cool. Pulling up the PowerPoint now. Let's see.
We're gonna have you under new business.
Yeah, we'll bring you under new business a little bit later.
Okay, great. Okay, fantastic. I'm here.
Okay. Nobody else for public comment? Okay, approval of the minutes. Make a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion on that.
I hear a second.
Second motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, treasurer's report. He's not here. Matera's not here. Bill, do you have anything?
Yes, I do. So the rainfall for the month, we had 11.69 inches as opposed to 3.58 last year for July. And the average for overall was 3.60 for July. So we had quite a bit of rain. We had 4 closures, July 1st, July 2nd, July 8th, and again on the 29th, all due to rainfall. And we also had an additional, we had 2 bypasses, July 1st, really late on July 1st, going to the 2nd, but July 1st, and again on July 9th. And that was it.
Okay. Well, let's go to secretary's report.
No report from me, Pete. I'd
Okay.
also like to ask the moderator, we have 4 attendees, Mr. Bajek, Mr. Casey, Ms. Jones, and Dr. Pellegrino. Without objection, if we could move those, all 4 of those people into the meeting with the ability to speak, that would be great, moderator.
Okay, if we do, I want to hold this back to 5 minutes per person, I guess. All right.
All right, I see them being shifted over. Can continue, Pete.
Okay, well, while we're waiting for them, want to do the rest of the committee reports? Wastewater treatment plant, no one's here. Water quality,
Mr. Chairman, we've been working on recommendations that we will be sending to the Harbor Commission, the Shellfish Commission, as well as the city agencies. Hopefully we can get this done, I'm hoping, by next month. And with the suggestions we send out, all referencing water quality, hopefully we can see a positive development within the city. And I'll leave it at that.
okay. Anybody any comments? Okay, permits. How about police? We have anybody from the police here? Well, advisory, I guess the water's like 74, 75 degrees now. And harbor management. Jeff? John, one of you? John, you're silenced.
No, we're good at the moment. We'll chime in as it's needed.
As needed.
Okay, thank you. All right, accepting of the committee reports, make a motion. Second,
Second motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Old business. Number 1, the Shellfish boat was in for repairs. Just so harbor management knows that we have to split the bill. They did a tune up and regular stuff like that, and the compound and waxed the boat and got it looking good again. And the police have been using it. The harbor master hasn't.
Right, well, on that subject, the police are getting a new boat this week, next week.
September, from what I hear.
Yeah, I heard it was maybe even sooner, and then the two boats that they have there now are gonna go up on the block.
Yeah.
Should we together be considering imploring the city to give us one of the boats? From what I understand, they're in tip-top shape.
No, they aren't in tip-top shape. One of them's been patched 50 times. The rubber on the boats is starting to dry rot on one of them. And
that's
the other
not
one they got in the water is still good.
Yeah, that's the one I guess we'd be talking about, but would it behoove us to consider,
If they donate it to us, it'd be nice. But then we're gonna have to find a place to put it.
that's what we have the city docks for. That's where it came from to begin with.
Well, that's where it should be, but, you know.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we,
I know the city now, the police department has a $30,000 budget for an RFP to do a study to where to relocate the Marine police. So that should be, I was told, because I did some exploring into it, and having to do with committee work that we were doing. And that's what I was told. And then I spoke to some of the powers to be at the city today, and they said they were going to try to force feed the RFP and get the study done in a timely manner.
yeah. Well, you can see if you can. I mean, it'd be great for us, because then we'd have one boat for shell fishing and one boat for the harbor master. This way, the police would still have a boat that they could grab anytime they want. Right now, they're using our boat. They've been using it a lot. It can go in shallow water. We're sure boats can too. The big boat can't though. So they've been using those boats for, you know, checking the harbors and everything.
All right, well, something to discuss in the future.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
All right.
Pete,
Jeff wants to
Yeah.
weigh in.
Yes, Jeff?
I have sort of an indirect harbor management report, and tell me if should put this off until the end, but it was July 23rd. I went to a ceremony on the Housatonic River in Stratford with members of the Stratford Harbor Management Commission. And it was a bill signing. Governor Lamont was there. And Norm Bloom brought one of his oyster vessels. Dave Hopp was there also. And there were a number of state legislators that were in attendance, as well as the mayor of Stratford. Now, they could have held this bill signing in Norwalk, but they decided to hold it in Stratford. Because the Housatonic River, you know, is a very productive seed oyster area. But the purpose of all of the speakers talked about the importance of Connecticut's shellfish industry and shellfish resources. And I don't know all the details of the bill, but the bill was intended to help or support shellfish businesses. It changed some of the taxation laws. It also set up a program for enhancement of shellfish resources. But it was a very good program to hear all legislators from throughout the state talk about how important shellfish resources are to the economy and the environment of Connecticut. I did take some pictures, and I should have sent them to you, but it was quite an encouraging and supportive event.
Yeah, we have tracks of natural beds for where the oysters spat and bring out to make a set. We have I think we have 4 natural beds, 4 marked tracks.
This ceremony the bill was described as a bipartisan bill demonstrating unanimous support in the legislature for the state's aquaculture programs and shellfishing businesses.
Well, that's good. Well, the shellfish, believe it or not, most of your shellfish come into Norwalk that go to market. You were at the thing we were, and aquaculture said about 90% of all shellfish come into Norwalk, go out of Norwalk. So we're a very dependent area on shellfish.
Yeah.
Count how many people work the business.
They talked about this at the governor's ceremony. They had statistics that they recited.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
Jeff. Any old business?
And Mr. Chairman, I think we should entertain the application for 26 Shorefront Park.
Okay.
Dr. Pellegrino, Counselor Casey, and Mr. Bajek are here.
Okay. Who's going to speak?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. This is John Casey, partner with Robinson and Cole on behalf of the applicant, Mrs. Vignault. Jim Bajek and Peter Pellegrino are here. I assume they're just getting their video and audio set. So first, I'd like to say I had a letter sent in this morning. I know it went to 3 email addresses, but I think one of them got sent back. And again, I apologize that it was sent in late. Sometimes we have a number of things we have to take care of, and by the time we got all the information, that's when I could send it in. So I believe it went to at least to Mr. Bartush. I saw his email address on there. So I don't know if the commission had a chance to read that letter in anticipation of tonight's meeting.
Mr. Casey, I've read it. If you'd like to just go through quickly to outline your points, that would be welcome.
Very good. So basically, the letter was in response to Mr. Carey's recent letter, and in a certain way also in response to his first letter, stating that this was that this project would have a significant impact on shellfish beds. Actually, this isn't in my letter, but I'll mention it now. I've asked for a copy of the 1882 shellfish bed map that's referenced in the city's ordinance, which is the basis for the commission's jurisdiction. It says you have jurisdiction over the natural beds and the tracks 1 through 7 on this 1882 map. So I sent an email request, a FOIA request into the health department for a copy of the map. I figured since they're the staff that supports your commission, that they would have a copy. They did not, and Bill Mooney, oh, there's Mr. Mooney, I didn't even put it together. Bill Mooney and I emailed back and forth, and still haven't, it seems that it's kind of hard to get hands on that map.
Town clerk would have it.
I don't know if Mr. Moody, I thought he checked with the town clerk.
Yeah, I had asked Tom about this, and he said it should be somewhere. I've looked through all of our materials. I'll continue to search for it, but I can't find it. I went to the clerk's office. I was there with the clerk and a couple of his staff, and we went through everything. We couldn't find it there either. So I'm going to continue to look for it.
Okay. We also we asked Mr. Carey, because he's relied on that in his letters. And I know Mr. Bajek asked him for a copy, but I don't think we've had a response from Mr. Carey either, is whether he has a copy. And there's something in his letter where he calls this track 2, but Mr. Mooney was nice enough, he sent me a map from, or I think part of a map from 1988, which shows some tracks. It looks like it's a CAM map, but it does have the tracks listed on it. But I think this is shown as track 6. So there's a little inconsistency. So I'm still not quite sure what track we're in or where the tracks are exactly located. I mean, for purposes of this application, we're assuming that we're in an area of your commission's jurisdiction, but I just wanted to put it out there that it'd be nice to see those maps or that map just to confirm. And I assume you all would want a copy of it as well somewhere. Someone actually said to me they're surprised it's just not hanging on a wall somewhere as a historic map. But anyway, so we're assuming for the purpose of this application, we're within your jurisdiction. Mr. Carey makes a strong argument that the proposal, which is to dredge 1,173 cubic yards over 5,826 square feet, and a third of that area that's going to be dredged has already been dredged by the South Norwalk Boat Club. That's part of, there's an overlap that we're proposing into their dredge footprint. So that's about a third of the dredged area has already been dredged. So it's already been disturbed. But his point was that that's a significant impact. I will let Dr. Pellegrino speak for himself, but what his report shows is that the area that had been previously dredged is recolonized. It's the same benthic habitat, same benthic communities in the undredged area and the dredged area. So where Mr. Carey says that he doubts whether the area will ever come back, I don't think that's supported by science. I'd also point out that Peter's reports have been used throughout the state by DEP to find that a dredge project, most of them, on an order of magnitude larger than this one, would not have a significant impact on a shellfish habitat. And that, and also that the DEP, and I couldn't find any evidence of what your commission said or what Mr. Carey might have said regarding the South Norwalk Boat Club's dredging proposal in 2013, that it would not have a significant impact, even though they acknowledged the fact, DEP did, that it was in a natural shellfish bed. They concluded that sediment impacts to shellfish will be short-term and minimal and are acceptable. Well, so I would say to this commission, if dredging 19,000 cubic yards of sediment over 172,000 square feet is...
Excuse me, was that a COP or was that a new dredge?
It was a COP.
Okay. So it's been disturbed before. That's all I gotta say.
Well, but as Dr. Pellegrino showed, the habitat returns to the pre-dredge habitat, and which is the, on most dredging projects, that's the justification for allowing the dredging. If every dredging resulted in permanent impacts to a benthic environment, I don't think DEP could ever allow it, because that's what you're trying to show in every dredging project I've been involved in. You try to show that whether it's maintenance dredging or new dredging, that you're not creating a permanent impact. You're not making some sort of anoxic area. If it's a very deep dredge footprint, like for the electric boat project, where they're taking away 1 million cubic yards, they're always looking to see if the dredge impacts to the area dredged are temporary. And I don't think that should make a difference whether it's new, maintenance, commercial, or residential. If DEP wants to find or grant a permit where there's impacts, and I think there'll always be impacts on the habitat, but I think if they find those impacts are temporary, I think you leave that to DEP to make that determination. All we're asking for is that the determination whether it's a significant impact on a shellfish bed, that the determination be consistent. I don't see, again, how, whether it's maintenance dredge or not, 172,000 square foot area, removing 19,000 cubic yards, how that impact on the same natural shellfish bed just to the north of where we are is not a significant impact, but the relatively minimal proposal here of 1,100 cubic yards over 5,800 square feet, again, 1,900 of which have been previously dredged, is a significant impact. I would say leave it to DEP. If they want to try to prevent a residential property owner from dredging, let us fight that fight with them. All we ask is that we be treated.
But you're basically talking apples to oranges.
I don't see how that is.
COP and new dredge, two different things totally.
I would
Yep.
turn to Dr. Pellegrino to say from a scientific.
Then he's
standpoint.
wrong.
Well, for the
Well,
record,
that's
I'd
it.
like Dr. Pellegrino to state his opinion, if you don't mind, Peter, and if you don't
I don't
mind.
mind what he says.
So what difference does it make what I say?
Right, I agree.
Well, I'd like it on the record, Peter, so everyone can hear. Everyone may not share that same opinion.
The difference was claimed, the difference between new dredging and maintenance dredging. Well, the fact that the area has recolonized itself since 2013 and it's basically back to normal. I don't think it makes any difference whether you're talking about maintenance dredging or new dredging. I mean, it's science not only here, but all over the world that's documented that recolonization occurs. It doesn't occur as rapidly in some places as others, but it does occur. So I don't know. He doesn't believe the science. That's fine.
And just to
Oh,
be
each
clear,
area is different. Each area is different.
So just
You're talking about an area. You're talking about an area that's right there. It's not. How different can it be?
So just a functional question, Mr. Casey, if I could. You mentioned this going too deep. I mean, it's certainly going to go too deep, whatever this commission resolves, and they will look at our consultation form regarding same. So yeah, it's going in that direction regardless.
well, we have to, yes, right. Yeah. But if I would say, again, I would just ask this project to be evaluated the same as other projects. When the Wilson Cove Marina project came before you, you made a determination that it would not be a significant impact. And that was considered new dredging by DEP. And Mr. Carey also determined it would not be a significant impact, even though it was a larger square foot dredging area. And I think just a slightly larger or close to the same amount of cubic yards being removed. And so in that project, which was deemed to be new dredging, because it was going deeper and it was the footprint was going to be changed somewhat. Again, both this commission and Mr. Carey determined that it was not a significant impact. And I don't see the consistency there. If we're talking about the same shellfish habitat resources and the equivalent amount of impacts. So that's our position. I understand that your charge as a commission here. I was able to, based on the map that Mr. Mooney provided to me, I roughly sketched out what would be, at least based on that map, the area of track 2, which extends, basically almost the entire shoreline of Norwalk, almost all the way, almost the entire thing. But anyway, I worked it out following the lines. I know this is rough. This is based on Google Earth, but it was basically approximately 67 million square feet. And we are proposing to impact 5,800 square feet, which would mean that we will impact 0.008% of that natural shellfish track. So my position would be that 0.008% of anything is a minor impact.
Thanks, Mr. Casey. I'd just like to ask if Mr. Bajek or Dr. Pellegrino have any further commentary. And then I'd like to go to our water quality and harbor management colleagues, if we could.
No, I have no further comments unless anybody has any further questions.
And same here, basically, I think John Casey encapsulated, our position and, Dr. Pellegrino's assessment, that there's not going to be any significant long-term change with this dredging. That's the essence of our application.
And if I could just conclude, if that assessment came up with anything different, if there was a significant oyster population, if there was a significant clam population, or any sort of benthic environment other than what was found right next door in the previously dredged area, which led to the conclusion that this will recolonize. And the concept of recolonization is the one that generally determines whether impacts in a shellfish area are temporary and acceptable or permanent. I don't think we would be here. That's why the applicant went through the effort to hire Dr. Pellegrino to provide that information. And it shows what it shows, that this impact will be temporary and has been found to be acceptable in numerous projects throughout the state and in the city itself. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Casey. Anyone from Harbor or Water Quality? I have a motion that I'd like to put on the floor after.
Yeah,
that
Steve,
board
right now,
discussion amongst the commissioners.
Steve, right now we have it. This is a tabled motion. Waiting to hear the results thereof and the feeling of the Shellfish Commission.
And that will be addressed, John.
Yep.
Mr. Stedman.
I know there's a number of harbor management issues that we've identified or that have been identified with this proposal that I guess are not the purview of the Shellfish Commission. So I don't want to, interfere with your discussion, but I will say that the provisions of the harbor management plan that talk about the protection of shellfish resources were developed not just by the Harbor Management Commission, but by the Harbor Management Commission in consultation with the Shellfish Commission, and also in consultation with DEEP and the Bureau of Aquaculture. And it was recognized that the Harbor Management Commission is not bound to, in all instances, follow a decision by the Shellfish Commission, but that we would work together to try to implement those policies that are in the plan. So they were prepared. They were prepared jointly, and we both had, I think we both have, both commissions have a responsibility to uphold them and to implement them. And I don't know, again, if but I think this is a relevant issue, is not just the impacts of this particular project. And we've heard that in both commissions in reviewing this, we're limited only to looking at this project. And we can't consider what other property owners may do in the future or may not do. But the harbor management plan is not, the commission is not bound by that in terms of implementing the harbor management plan, because throughout the plan, we talk about the importance of recognizing and avoiding cumulative impacts, which can result from individually minor but collectively significant projects over time. And so what we're talking about here, and I think this is relevant to your discussion as well, it's a new approach really to equating the dredging that would be associated with access through a residential property with the dredging that's associated with the operation of a water dependent use that's defined in the Coastal Management Act. So that's a significant change and has significant implications throughout the state, not just in Norwalk Harbor. And in saying that, I'm not just saying that myself, because maybe I don't know a whole lot, but that's the position of the Bureau of Aquaculture, which is the state authority on shellfish resources. So I think that the Harbor Commission will continue to review this and make its decision or make a finding, hopefully at its next meeting. With respect to the natural bed maps, I believe that those are filed in the state library, the original maps, and they're very big maps. The legal descriptions of these tracks that you mentioned, track 2 and 6 and the others, those legal descriptions we have, and those were used by the Bureau of Aquaculture to create contemporary maps based on those descriptions. Whether that's satisfactory for answering the question of what's the original map, it probably isn't. But those are the only comments I would make now. It's a very interesting discussion. But
Just for purposes.
thank you, Steve, for speaking, letting me speak.
On the maps, we put a request into the state library. They have not found a copy yet. So if we find one.
You'll probably have to go up to get them because I don't believe they're the size that they could scan.
I'm just working with our librarians and they've requested a search and I understand they're trying to find them, but they haven't found them yet. So just passing on that information for you.
Chairman Schneerlein.
Stephen, the major reservation I have is this is not just a request for one resident to dredge once. Once and if they dredge, that's only going to be good for maybe 5 years. At the long run, 10 years. Then they're going to be back dredging again and again and again, as long as they want an area where they can pull a fairly large size vessel into. And this is repetitive damage, and this is repetitive removal of some of the microinvertebrates and macroinvertebrates that happen to live in that area. Yes, South Norwalk Boat Club does that, but they have been doing it long before any of these agencies were in existence, and in part were grandfathered by them. So we also have the fact that they are a water dependent resource for people. And the owners of these boats could ask to store their boats at any of the marinas that are in the area, which would probably be a lot cheaper than the dredging itself. And the fact that they would have to do it year after year after year. So these are all things to consider. Realistically, we know from past history, the dredging could be leveled out in one storm. We know that from the shell fishermen in the area who, after one storm, told everybody that their beds were covered by 4 feet of sediments. And that literally could nullify any of the dredging that was done. So these are factors that have to be considered too. And since they're right on the edge of a mud flat, and realistically, that whole area is exposed with a north wind at a dead low tide during a spring high tide sequence. And I've seen the entire mud flat, and the only thing that was exposed was the river itself. So these are factors that still need to be taken into consideration. I've said my piece. Thanks.
You're muted, Pete.
Okay, anything else? You have anything to say?
I would like to put a motion on the floor for discussion.
Any second?
Oh, I've got to pull it up here. I've got some computer issues.
second motion.
Hang on. So I'd like to thank the applicants for their professional presentation and look forward to working with them on this and other projects down the road. Let me begin and quote the proposed motion. The Norwalk Shellfish Commission strongly opposes any potential dredging as applied for at the 26 Shorefront Park site due to the serious damage it would cause to coastal resources in this natural shellfish bed in the public trust and under the NSC's jurisdiction. As the commission responsible for stewarding greater than 50% of the shellfish harvest in the state of Connecticut, such a private de novo dredging project would be entirely unacceptable in our area and set a dangerous precedent here and statewide. In dock applications, the Shellfish Commission routinely asks for dock stops to be added to private floating docks to avoid damage to the benthic environment. This application asks for the entire local benthic area to be removed against all reasonable residential dock best practices. This fraction of our virgin natural bed is valuable both biogeochemically and hydrologically. The Shellfish Commission fully agrees with David Carey, head of the Connecticut Bureau of Aquaculture, who stated, quote, "The Bureau of Aquaculture maintains the proposal will have a significant impact on shellfish resources and shellfish habitat. While a disturbed area may recolonize, which is disputable, the area is not functionally the same and is unable to serve the same purpose as it was designated for historically," end quote. In the Shellfish Commission's formal role of advising the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission on matters related to shellfish management, as elucidated in the Norwalk Harbor Management Plan, we strongly urge the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission to find this application inconsistent with the plan and communicate same to DEEP. And lastly, in service to our shellfishing company stakeholders, the Shellfish Commission has obtained 4 letters from the shellfish industry, from Captain Kramer, from Captain Bloom, from Captain Stabell, and from Captain Hopp. And without objection, I'd like to include those letters as part of our consultation form to DEEP. And that's the end of that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, do we make a motion?
That was the motion.
I mean, second the motion?
Second motion.
All in favor?
All right,
Aye. Okay, that's that.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Right, we're all done.
Okay, new business?
So I'd like to introduce everyone to Ms. Taisha Cole, who is a soon-to-be graduating graduate student at the University of Connecticut. And she has pioneered an oyster shell recycling program. As I understand, she has one running in Fairfield. And she has a presentation tonight about the project she proposes that would include some recycling here in Norwalk. So without objection, I would like to give Ms. Cole the floor.
Great. Thank you, Steve, as well for that. And can everyone hear me just fine?
I can.
Okay, thanks for the invite as well. I'm going to share my screen, and also just a correction, I am partnered with the University of Connecticut for the CTC grant, the COVID-19 C grant that they just received recently. But my graduate school is based in Virginia American Public University in Charlestown, just FYI. And so I'm going to share my screen to share the PowerPoint presentation. Just a second, yeah. It's loading. Give me a
I think
second.
someone's sleeping.
Thankfully, she took her down to the cove and
Wore her out.
yes. Fortunately. Okay, my little Apple dock is spinning. Yeah. Okay. Zoom will not be able to record the contents of your screen until it is quit. You can choose to quit. Oh, that's weird. Okay, sorry, trying to. Okay, I think I got it. All right, can everyone see my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm good.
Cool.
I'm good.
I'm not used to this. So, yep, I am working on developing a framework to start an oyster shell recycling program in Norwalk. And like Stephen said, I just wrapped up my master's in environmental policy with a focus on fish and wildlife management. I chose to focus on this because Norwalk has, as you guys know, over 30 restaurants in the city that serve oysters throughout the year and pretty much just send them to landfill. I think it was Mr. Stedman mentioning earlier the
Yeah.
Connecticut Senate Bill 840, which just passed, and it allows the Connecticut Department of Agriculture to acquire shell or other culture materials like mussels or clam shells to deposit on state shellfish beds and allow them to fund oyster shell recycling programs. As you guys know, already know, like oyster shells or reefs increase biodiversity in the Long Island Sound. They help support a $30 million economy in the state and help control erosion along with providing water filtration services naturally. Why oyster shells? We're going to look at some case studies, but they can be very easily collected from restaurants and festivals, cured for 6 months minimally to make sure you're not introducing any invasives into local waters. And they support, they've been said to support over 300 species of plant and animals by NOAA. And so this is a local case study up in Fairfield, Connecticut, being run by their Department of Conservation by a guy named Mr. Tim Macklin, I believe is his last name. So they launched this program in 2016 with 4 restaurant partners. This is their curing site just behind the Conservation Department building, actually. And he's pretty much doing this like grassroots, pretty much no funding with just him and his teenage son, typically over the weekends. He collects shells. Any shells collected between September and December are returned back to the water in June. Shells collected from January to March are returned back to the water in September or afterwards. And again, it's separated by groups. So you can see it in this picture. Let me try to move this out the way. Yeah, okay.
Excuse me, how do they set, why are they separated by groups? Are they from where different oyster?
At different time slots. So the shells that are collected from September to December, let's say maybe on the
Okay,
on the right, yeah, you have to make sure they're given at least 6 months. Otherwise, you risk the chance of introducing invasive species into local waters, especially if the shells are not from local shellfish beds.
did you talk to agriculture about this? Aquaculture?
David Carey, he's the
Yes.
yes, he's involved. We are in touch with him back and forth for the last couple of months. And because we are hopefully getting funding through the University of Connecticut for the CT COVID-19 Sea grant, he knows what we've been working on. The main hurdle has been finding a suitable location to cure. And so I was hoping that I would have more luck in Norwalk. I'm based in Stamford currently, but yeah,
Well, I can talk to a few of the oystermen, see if they have somewhere you can make something
Yes.
like that.
Yes, we were hoping the South Street Smith facility location could possibly work. And I've also been in touch with Mr. Jimmy Bloom as well. And they've agreed to be a third party collector of the shells. So I'm really excited about that too. But yeah, I would definitely appreciate that. Make
Yeah,
sure.
South Smith Street has the room too.
I'm sorry.
South Smith Street, they have, I think there's a couple lots there that aren't even being used.
Okay, perfect. That's really good news to hear. Yeah. So this is what the operation looks like today in Fairfield. They're typically collecting about 300 pounds a week, usually. Prior to COVID-19, they were working with 5 restaurants. This is kind of what the math looks like in 2021 because of COVID-19, things slowed down. But at the peak, let's see, their peak year, I think was 2019, just before COVID-19 hit. And again, you typically just plant the oyster shells in mesh bags, usually 30-pound bags, and you either throw them over the dock and let them hang and attract spat naturally, or you can spread them along the shellfish beds, but you guys probably already know that part. And so this is another case study in New York City. It's actually one of the United States' most famous case studies for oyster shell recycling. They have a large budget. They're funded by the city partially. They work with 75 restaurants in the city of New York, and thus far have collected 1.6 million pounds of recycled shell and installed them in 13 oyster reefs across the New York harbor. This is kind of what it looks like once they're planting them back into the harbor itself. And this is just kind of one of their shell piles where they talk about becoming a 1 billion oyster project member, where you help support their initiatives as well. They work with a local high school there and really do a great job at creating some online content for their students. And so we were talking about policy earlier, just to give you guys a scope of what's going on nationally. In North Carolina, they made it illegal to dump shells in landfills. Maryland also has a shell recycling tax credit already on the books. Connecticut just passed, and New York State is also currently working on one as well. This was just kind of a social, environmental, economic visual that I put together for my graduate school project, where if we do nothing, essentially every time we're eating at oyster restaurants or restaurants that serve oysters, and we send those shells to landfills, we're essentially making it more expensive for our oyster fishermen to go and find more oysters in the ocean and bring to our dinner plates. You guys, I'm sure already know, one oyster shell can pretty much provide homes to 12 to sometimes 20 different baby oyster spat. And, you know, I've already mentioned all of the benefits of them filtering water and increasing biodiversity and things of that nature. So I was surprised that a lot of the cities in Connecticut don't have a program yet, but that's what the Senate bill will be working on establishing in the very near future. This is just kind of to show you guys like what I've been working on. This is the oyster shell recycling restaurant application, where I would work with each restaurant owner and their staff and look at their busier times and what times would they prefer me to pick up the shell and actually train their staff. But it's not, I mean, it's not rocket science. They're sitting them outside with a covered bin, and I would pick them up and dump them at said location. And we were just talking about this earlier, project supporters. I'm partnered with the University of Connecticut for the CT Grant Shell Recycling Work Group. Norm Bloom and Son LLC, the Bloom family, have agreed to be the end user for the shell. I was also approved for a match grant up to $7,500 if I raise half of that if we need to. My goal is to get started as soon as possible with a curing location. I would love to be an official partner of the Norwalk Oyster Show Festival coming up next month. I think I told Mr. Steven, but I plan to buy this oyster costume. It's kind of like a mascot costume where I'm walking around and educating people about why they should not be tossing their shells into the trash can, because every time we do that, we're just making it more difficult to eat oysters in the future. And so yeah, this is what I want to do. The long-term game is to create online content where students anywhere virtually can learn about the benefits of oysters to their environment, even outside of Norwalk itself. But got to get started first. And so this is my contact information. If anyone needs it. I don't think I mentioned this part, but I formed an official nonprofit specifically to create online content that teaches about landfill diversion and local economic job development opportunities from diverting resources from landfill. And so the name of the organization is Closed Loop Initiative Partners, or CLIP for short, FYI. And yeah, that's the end of the presentation. I'm really happy she slept through that.
Taisha, I'll talk to Norm Bloom for you. He's right around the corner from where I live.
Oh, perfect.
If you've ever been down to his place, I'll give him I'll see him tomorrow anyways. When I do, I'll give you a call. Maybe we can set up a meeting.
Yeah. No, actually, no, that's great too. Jimmy and I talked. She's supposed to be in childcare on Fridays and Sundays. And so Jimmy said his free days are also Fridays in the afternoon. So I told him, like, give me a few weeks and I will definitely schedule some time to come down and see the operation in person, because he told me about the huge oyster recycling shell pile they have up in New Haven.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would love to see that eventually. It's just been at first a little bit tricky with COVID and getting her back into a childcare routine. But yeah, no, if you guys have any connections with this South Street or South Smith Street facility location or another suitable location where they could cure and the smell wouldn't be, an issue, that would be awesome.
Down there would be perfect. You got the sewer plant near it. That would cover it.
Okay.
Right.
Cool.
Okay, thank you very much. That was
Right.
very good.
Just a couple of things. So first of all, thank you very much for a great presentation. And this is
Yes.
a very worthwhile endeavor. And
Thank you.
also congratulations on your graduation. I didn't know that you had finished. That's great.
Yes, finally. Thank you.
Just a couple of really quick questions. Is there any requirement of the restaurateurs to treat or clean the shells in any way, or they just deposit them in buckets for the volunteers and your staff to collect?
The latter. So the curing process over 6 months is why they have to sit out in the sun, typically during warmer months as well. I could go back to the slide, but like whichever the months were where it's leading into the winter months, if you start to cure towards the beginning of winter, you do want to sit them out a little bit longer when spring starts to peak and that sun and rain can wash any debris that they have off. But for the restaurant part, no, we just require that they put them in the buckets, and they are typically I think 30-gallon, or there's the 5-gallon buckets and the 30 gallons, depending on the capacity of the restaurant, and they seal it with the top. Mr. Carey, just for best management practices and wanting to make sure no invasives cross over any way possible, wants you to have a what do you call it? The trailer that you connect to the back of your vehicle to separate your shell, the shell that you pick up this week from shell that you may have picked up last week. And that way that dump trailer per se can be sprayed out or bleached out relatively easily.
Thank you.
Okay.
One other quick question from me. You mentioned multiple species. So would the collection also be open to clams, mussels, and other species perhaps not native here, scallops and the like?
Yes, any hard shell oyster spat can grow on. Their preferred shell, of course, is their own species. But yep, the Nature Conservancy is a really easy case study that comes to mind with me. They've used mollusk and clams from the past, just for the purposes of my capstone project. Like I specifically focused on oyster shells from restaurants, but yes, like all shells typically will work.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I know down south, like in Jersey, they use surf clams that are all crunched up, so.
Okay. Yeah. In states where, we're not near the ocean. I'm originally from Ohio. Before COVID-19, I followed family out here. But in states that you don't have the ocean, they will grind up oyster shells and use them as chicken feed because they're great calcium supplements. So it's just, another way to keep them out of the landfill. But if you have like a decent sized scaled operation, this can really save a city thousands and thousands of dollars in tipping fees from avoiding that cost at the landfill. So that's another benefit, but yeah.
And I look forward to supporting this in any way possible. Thank you so much.
Yes, and anything you want, just call Oyster Shellfish Commission.
And Pete Jeff has a comment.
Okay.
Yep.
This is very, very interesting. Could you talk a little bit about what the end use is? The end use that you envision only for, again, oyster farming, or is there a potential use in resiliency projects? That Connecticut is promoting what they call living shorelines for shore protection and erosion control. And I'll give an example. There's an example in Stratford where to stop shoreline erosion in a pilot project, they're placing hard structures off of the shore. But the use of these oyster shells, it seems that's much more better defined as a living shoreline than some of these hard structures with just grass, plantings behind them. So have you thought about that as an end use for the shells?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that. I actually cited the Stratford case study in my capstone project to graduate. So that is an amazing project. And I know Circa is the active organization in Connecticut that's also working on living shorelines and green infrastructure policy and things of that nature. It's definitely a possibility. It's just starting off like as a pilot, it was just easier because I had reached out to Circa before, and not that I won't say like that they weren't interested, but they kind of wanted you to be a lot further along than just like in pilot and figuring out phase of things. But as a person like who studied environmental policy, I am more passionate about things like green infrastructure and living shorelines, like you mentioned. It's just a lot easier to pilot with something that's a lot faster to see the benefits of. Like, so, obviously Norman Bloom, I believe, is Norwalk in Connecticut's largest oyster farming family in the state. And so when Mr. Jimmy Bloom said, we'll take your shell, after trying to reach out to Circa and going through all the bureaucracy of things, I was like, yeah, this is fantastic, at least for funding purposes when I apply for an actual grant. But no, you're absolutely right. Like I said, they increase biodiversity. They benefit 300 species. You can have a living shore wall and help reduce erosion and whatnot, but it just takes a lot more collaboration. And just in the pilot phase of things right now, it was just easier to go that route. But no, you're definitely right, Mr. Stedman.
I don't think you should lose sight of that and have that as a long-range goal. If this program can be expanded and thank you very much. It's quite interesting. And are you looking also for a site in Stamford?
Yes, that has
And not to take the time here tonight, but I I'll contact you because I think the Stanford Shellfish Commission would also be quite interested, and maybe that would help to expand this program.
I would love your help. Like I said, at first I didn't think Stanford had a commission. I thought maybe they were connected to Greenwich.
No, I can tell you about that. Well, not to take our time now, but the Stanford Harbor Management Commission functions as the Shellfish Commission. So I can put you in contact with them.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Yeah,
If that helps to expand this program. And
yeah, that's perfect. No, the hardest part is just finding a curing location, because when I'm not talking to people on a shellfish commission and I'm trying to explain like oyster shell recycling in a phone call or even an email, they're, you know, I look like really alien. They're like, what are you talking about?
I think you're in the ozone layer.
Yeah.
I know.
So no, I appreciate everyone's help. I'm super excited. Thank you.
Definitely.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pete,
All right.
Pete, a few questions
Mhm.
and a few comments. Taisha, are you looking at all oysters that come from this area, stay in this area? Because not all the restaurants will buy Bloom's shellfish. Some might get them from a New Jersey carrier or from a Delaware carrier. And would they be inspected for disease?
They're not inspected for disease. That is exactly why they have to cure for a minimum of 6 months, minimally. Sometimes they cure for even longer. If Jimmy Bloom and oyster, or even, I think I forgot to put this in the presentation, Jimmy Bloom said that they also work with no-ink aquaculture co-op up in Groton, Connecticut. Am I pronouncing that right? Groton.
Yeah, but it's
And-
no ink.
No ink. And so oftentimes the shells will not come from the same location, but that is exactly why minimally 6 months curing, to make sure there's no chance of anything being introduced.
I have 4 things. That's one. The shell is critical, and you mentioned for other species. The Milford Labs, the NOAA labs in Milford, did some research on fish spawning. And I don't know if you're aware of the fact that fish like flounder, as well as tautog, require a gravel or a shell bottom. And in the old days, when they used to have shell sitting on the docks here, and Pete and I and Jeff are old enough to remember the piles that they used to have of the oyster shells. Sorry, Steve, I was being nice to you.
Yeah, speak for yourself, Joe.
Yeah,
They would have piles of the shells there, which they would put out dutifully to enhance the shellfish beds. We had flounder and we had tautog in the harbor. You didn't have to go halfway across the sound to get it. When they stopped shelling, it disappeared. And the fishermen, oh, it's the cormorants, it's this, it's that. No, the shell wasn't there, the gravel wasn't there.
Yeah.
The mud bottom doesn't provide the habitat that these animals want to spawn in. So it's another carrot for you to have to possibly get more people on board. But the other thing that the reason they had to get rid of the shell is the neighbors complained about the smell.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Smith Street would be a nice idea, but with an east wind, the aroma goes directly to the Maritime Aquarium.
Okay. That is
That's a problem.
That's something to consider. And I jotted down that you said Milford Lab, so I'll check into that too, just as another case study to support this. But I mean, you guys said like the wastewater treatment plant is there, and In Stanford, we were originally going to try to cure just a small pile at the Cove Sanctuary Park because I live right around the corner from it as well. But Parks and Recreation, they were fearful that people would also complain about the smell, even though Sound Waters, the local environmental organization based there, they were on board and said like, hey, this could be a great opportunity to educate the public that like, yeah, you're going to have like some smelly oysters curing here, but the flip is that if you are a person who lives in Connecticut and you probably eat oysters throughout the summer, like if you guys can't have it all the time, like if we're not going to help build their numbers back up, globally speaking, their numbers are down. I think 98%, that's been cited in a lot of research papers. And it's because of the constant consumption and obviously habitat destruction and all of the other issues. And we're not putting them back into the ocean. And yeah, guys, if you want to eat oysters, you have to support their habitat. And a result of that may be smelling some shells for a little bit. Now, Brian Carey did mention possibly spraying like a lime solution on them sometimes. But again, that's not really mentioned in any of the best management practices across the country. New York City, again, they're working with 75 restaurants, moving, 1 point whatever million pounds back into their harbor. And they just simply cure theirs for a minimum of 6 months. And I believe also in the Bronx, so it is a more urban area, but their take is that it's providing hyper local jobs in the environmental sector that people would not have had before. I've studied like animals. I went to a school inside of the Cincinnati Zoo as a high school student, so that was a really cool experience. But outside of grad school and whatnot, like I certainly have. I eat oysters all the time, but if it was not for my education, like the public, I wouldn't have known all of the benefits and the importance that this species, contributes to our economies.
Now I'll back up. If you had to live across the river from that smell all the time, how would you feel about it?
I mean, personally, also, I don't think it's all the time because you have your summer months and your winter months.
We don't get east winds all the time. It's only when we get easterly winds.
Okay. But also if like this site that we mentioned, the South Street Smith facility, if it's already, located at where a wastewater treatment plant is, I mean, it probably doesn't smell the best there anyway.
It doesn't.
Just
If they keep their doors closed, it's not bad. It's when they
Yeah.
open their doors that I worked across the street from that facility for quite a few years. And it can be very good, or it can be so bad that the customers coming into the aquarium say, how do you stand that? And then we have to pick up the phone and tell them to close their doors. They close their doors and life goes on.
Yeah.
But you can't tell the oyster shells to close their doors.
Well, what I'm saying, Joe, is past the sewer plant. Then you have DPW plant,
Right.
their working area. And past that is a lot behind their big shed.
Yep.
So they're down even farther.
That would be beautiful.
So that would be perfect,
Okay.
So I'll see if I can get a hold of a few people from DPW and see if we can do something about that.
Okay.
We
Very,
can try.
very,
Pete, Dr. Pinto would like to be recognized.
very exciting. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Pete, Dr. Pinto would like to
Yes.
be recognized.
okay.
Tracy, I want to commend you on a very well presented study that you've done. I also had a couple of questions similar to long line that Mr. Schneerline had. What's the possibility of attracting other varmints in that area as a result of, consumption of maybe, for example, the remains in the shellfish? How does that work?
Oh yeah, because they're on like an asphalt pavement, like let me go back to the picture. The tissues get dried out. I'll go back to this. Sorry. Yeah, so there's a little like grass there, but it's on an asphalt pavement, you know, so the tissues get dried out, and the sun and the rain is what's creating that curing, sanitizing process, like for lack of a better word, I suppose. But and any runoff, again, it just goes straight onto this asphalt, and then you have pretty much your heat island effect where the sun just dries all of that out naturally. But again, that's why it's like really important. You cannot place these into the water before a minimum of 6 months. Some places.
No, I'm just saying you have perhaps other varmints consuming some of the leftovers and remains. Field mice, perhaps rats, that type of thing. Is there a potential draw of that particular concern?
I mean, based on the case study.
I don't know myself. As I said, I as far as what the attraction would be of, for example, of other animals coming into that area to consume the leftovers or the remains type of thing, that would sort of contribute to sort of the contrary to the cleansing process, if you will, because it would certainly add more unnecessary material to that, in that area. But, and the issue certainly of what the restaurants are going to be doing, are they going to be conscientious in sort of when they clean plates off and throwing the shell into a contained area? Are they going to be very conscious? You got to make sure that they're certainly very conscientious about having other scraps of food that might come along with that, with that shell, that material that gets thrown in there. So I'm sure you have an education policy for some of the restaurants and how you would like this to be handled prior to your picking it up and bringing it into that particular area.
Yes. No, you're exactly correct. I can keep checking like the other best management practices, but the largest case studies out of like New York City, also California, I believe Louisiana, Georgia. No, the shells they cure, and that really hasn't been mentioned as an issue, fortunately. And yes, like you do train the restaurants, the back of the house to make sure that they're only putting shells in the buckets. Nothing else goes in the buckets. And when your shell piles get past like 3 feet, I think one of the best management practices out of New York City said that they do occasionally turn the shell themselves, whether that be with like a, what's the tool, like a rake or like I'm sorry, I don't know, like the commercial.
Yeah, but do you have heavy equipment to manage all this operation?
Starting off, we do not, but Senate.
I'm sure you're going to need trailers, trucks, sort of manpower to lift the material, maybe move the shell around. It's not going to be easy. I grew also in reference to Mr. Schneerlein and others. I also grew up in the area where I saw these oyster shells, the mounds, the piles that were there, and actually ended up, oftentimes jumping on those piles and playing on them myself.
Oh my goodness.
But, down in the area that they were stored in the Water Street area. But no, as I said, I like the presentation, and I wish you well on this project. I think it's a very worthwhile project, and all the ideas that you got, subsequent ideas with regard to remediation of the shorefront lining, et cetera, in addition to serving as calcium phosphate or for consumption for animal feed is certainly of interest too. So
yeah, no, thank you, John. And that's crazy you were jumping into those piles. I can't imagine.
As a kid,
We all did.
As a kid.
We all ran up them. And we all stunk like them.
Yeah, you guys are living the life on the coast. Okay. That's cool. No, yeah, we'll make sure we train. That's what the Senate Bill 840 is hopefully supporting, already saying that they're going to be providing some funding for this, but getting approved for the match grant, and also already being in the working group with the Connecticut or the University of Connecticut's working group for COVID-19. It's a long name, like it's a long official name, but hopefully like the money gets approved for like some startup costs under $10,000. I really just need to purchase like a used dump trailer. Maybe one will be donated to the nonprofit. I can explain to people that it would be a tax write-off. We are tax exempt ourselves. And we may try to charge restaurants like $15 per week once we get established, like after a 3-month pilot phase, to make sure that we're somewhat financially sustainable with or without the help of outside grants, because you're right, the project, logistically speaking, can be very labor intensive. So yeah, absolutely.
We all have volunteers, won't you, helping you?
Yes, that is the goal too. There's a high school here, West
Rocks?
Bank. It's
Hill?
West Hill. Yes, they have a aquaculture
Okay.
class. on
That's
site.
Stanford.
Oh yeah. Yes. So that one's in Stanford. Did I find I'm trying to think back to my research project, like for school. I don't know if I found one in Norwalk yet, but like certainly we can definitely offer students like, hours to graduate college or high school. We're on the coast, so I'm sure there's tons of students needing like volunteer hours to fulfill and whatnot, for sure.
Okay.
The baby slept through. I am elated.
Oh, he stuck his head up and looked once.
Yeah. Or baby girl, her hair's super curly like mine, but yeah.
How old?
She's 2.5. She's a big toddler, and it's like COVID has been very special. I ended up needing like an extra 3 months to finish grad school. I just told my professor like it's crazy right now for the world, but definitely for parents of toddlers, because they don't care,
No. I have a 2.5-year-old grandson and a 15-month-old granddaughter, and the girl's the wild one.
Yeah, if she was woke, I'm sure I have to get off way earlier. So no, I'm grateful, but thank you all for having me and inviting me. This
Okay.
is really
And I have your
exciting.
phone number, so I'll give you a call as soon as I find anything.
Yes, his phone number, or honestly email if email is easy for you, because usually I usually miss phone calls with this one most of the time. So if you call,
Well, I got
definitely-
both of them, so I
okay,
can email and call.
awesome. All right,
Okay.
cool.
Thank you.
All right, thank you,
you.
everyone.
Night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Steve, anything else?
No more questions?
No, sir.
Not that
Okay.
I know of.
Cool, I'm gonna get off. All right.
Okay.
Have a good night, everyone.
You too.
All
Thank
right.
you. Okay, Steve, anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, our next meeting's gonna be September 1st, 2021.
Wow, already. Thanks, Pete.
Okay, make a motion to adjourn.
So move, sir.
Second? Nick? He must have left.
No, he's there.
Okay, second motion.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Okay,
Yeah.
all in favor, aye.
Aye,
Guys,
night.
thanks, Nick.
Thank you.